See Beyond the Hidden. Introduction. You're about to discover something most people will never even suspect exists. A method so ancient, so sacred, it was hidden in plain sight for over 3,000 years. This wasn't meant for the masses. It was passed from master to initiate in secret halls beneath stone temples, carved in silence, veiled in symbol. And yet, here it is, resurfacing. Not by accident, but because you've already felt it. That strange awareness you can't explain, the moment when a chill runs through you with no reason, when your gut reacts before your mind understands, when something feels off and no one else sees it. These aren't random. They're signals, proof that your perception is no longer bound to the five senses. It means something inside you is waking up, because there is a way of seeing that isn't done with the eyes, it's done with the soul. And by the end of this message, you'll understand the vibrational signature that unlocks this inner gateway, the hidden current that turns awareness into vision. But first, you need to understand the truth you were never taught. You were never fully in just one world. You've always existed between two, not metaphor, not philosophy, reality. And those who came before us, priests, sages, temple architects, knew it. They didn't guess. They lived in that layered reality. Manly P. Hall devoted his life to revealing these truths, that beneath every myth is a method, behind every symbol, a science, and within every human being, a map back to the source. What you're about to receive is not a technique to add to your mind, but a way to uncover what has always lived beneath it. So take a breath, not just with your lungs, but with your presence, because this isn't about believing, it's about remembering, and once you do, the veil between the worlds begins to dissolve, and the hidden becomes visible. Chapter 1. The Ancient Whispers. You never understood. In every age of the world, there have been a few, just a few, who have heard the silent voice behind the voice, who have seen the shadow behind the flame, and who have felt the presence that walks behind the scene. These are not individuals possessed of some unnatural faculty. They are, rather, those who have become still enough to hear what never ceases speaking, and to see what has always been present, yet shrouded in the veil of familiarity. To such individuals, life ceases to be random or senseless, and begins to reveal its concealed structure, its exquisite, luminous pattern, designed not in the confusion of chaos, but in the harmony of cosmic law. You, the listener, are not hearing these words by coincidence. You have been stirred from within, not by me nor by sound, but by the memory of something long forgotten. That memory does not reside in the intellect. It rests in a more ancient chamber of your being, one that existed before you bore a name, before you were given a language with which to conceal your knowing. The Greeks spoke of anamnesis, the soul's recollection of truth not taught, but reawakened. This is the beginning of that remembrance. Somewhere along your journey, you've experienced moments that defied reason, moments that did not conform to the rhythms of cause and effect, yet impressed themselves upon you with such intensity. They left behind a question, one that never entirely faded, a fleeting glimpse in a dream, a presence felt in solitude, the sudden sense that time itself had thickened, stilled, bent toward you. You may have dismissed these impressions as fiction, or left them behind in the unconscious drawers of childhood wonder. But wonder is not the imagination of the ignorant. It is the language of the awakened soul. The sages of old did not dismiss these moments. They studied them. They preserved them in sacred rites, in symbols carved into temple walls, in manuscripts penned under the watch of the stars. For they knew that the world is layered, that behind the physical there exists another realm, not metaphorical but vibrational, not philosophical but actual. And they knew that human beings, when prepared and purified, could perceive both. The ancient Egyptians taught that every man and woman walks between two lands, the land of matter and the land of spirit. The initiates of the mystery schools spent decades, even lifetimes, preparing the body, disciplining the mind, refining the breath and purifying the intention, so that when the veil lifted they would not shatter under the weight of the revealed. For to truly see is not only a gift, it is a burden a sacred responsibility. And only those whose hearts have been properly weighed may carry it without falling. What is this veil that conceals the inner world? It is not made of stone or steel. It is composed of assumption, of distraction, of habit. The veil is not external. It is woven from within. It is stitched together by the beliefs we inherit and never question, by the noise we call thought, by the tempo of modern life, which allows no room for reverence. And yet, through this veil, light still shines. Faintly at first, like the stars hidden behind the morning sky, but in moments of stillness, of profound presence, that light becomes perceivable. Have you ever stood in silence so complete that the world itself seemed to pause? Have you ever felt a place or a person before your mind had time to analyze? Have you walked into a room and known, without a word, what had occurred there? These are not fantasies. They are the early stirrings of a dormant sense, a faculty older than language which has been numbed by sensory excess, dulled by over-reliance on reason, and mocked by a culture that has confused intellect with wisdom. This faculty is what the ancients called the eye behind the eyes. It is what the Hermetists understood as the gateway to the intelligible world. It is what the Vedic sages referred to as the third eye, not a physical eye, but a vortex of perception rooted in a different layer of the self. And while poets may have used metaphor to express it, the mystics knew it as real, measurable not by instruments, but by the transformation it wrought within those who touched it. But know this, you do not activate this vision by accident, nor is it granted by chance. It awakens when your being becomes resonant with a higher frequency, and resonance cannot be faked. It is not induced by desire alone, but by alignment of mind, heart, and breath. The ancients did not merely meditate for peace. They meditated for perception, for clarity, for communion with that which transcends the veil of form. You may have sensed that something is shifting within you, that your thoughts feel more distant, your senses more heightened, your dreams more vivid. This is the first sign that the inner gate is stirring. It does not swing open with thunder. It opens slowly, by degrees, and the more you quiet the world within, the more you will feel the world behind. This journey is not about escaping reality, but returning to it, fully. For reality has always been composed of both the visible and the invisible. One nourishes the body, the other nourishes the soul, and only by perceiving both can man be whole. The path of inner vision does not require the rejection of the material, but the integration of the spiritual. It is not about abandoning the world, but about walking through it with a vision that pierces illusion and touches essence. As you proceed, do not be afraid. You are not becoming something unnatural. You are becoming natural again. Your vision is not expanding beyond your humanity. It is returning to its rightful domain, the domain of symbol, of light, of frequency, the domain where truth is not argued, but known. The ancient whispers you once ignored are becoming louder. They have waited patiently, just beyond the reach of your hearing. And now that you are listening, they will guide you, not as commands, but as invitations. Not to follow blindly, but to remember fully. This chapter has no end, for remembrance is not a destination, it is a rhythm, a sacred echo, and once heard, it begins to shape the silence around it. You are not entering something new, you are returning to something eternal, and the door in it has already begun to open. Chapter 2. Between the Seen and the Unseen. The material world, with its dense forms and urgent rhythms, was never meant to be the whole story. It is the outer garment of a much older truth, one that moves in silence, flows in vibration, and speaks not through language but through resonance. What your eyes see, what your hands touch, and what your mind names are but the outermost expressions of an inner intelligence. Yet man, having become enmeshed in sensation, has forgotten that these expressions are only symbols, echoes of a deeper cause. The ancient philosophers knew that what we call the visible world is not primary, but secondary. The Greeks divided existence into two domains, the sensible and the intelligible. The sensible is the world of appearance governed by time and change. The intelligible is the realm of principle, unchanging and eternal, of which the physical is merely a reflection. Plato, in his wisdom, taught that most of humanity lives chained within a cave of shadows, mistaking illusion for substance. Only those who turn from the flickering wall and walk into the light can come to know the source behind the shadow. To the ancient Egyptians, this duality was encoded into the very structure of their cosmology. The world of the seen was but one half of the soul's journey. The other half, hidden in the duat, was invisible to the eyes of the uninitiated, but the initiate, through purification and ritual, learned to walk in both worlds simultaneously, not as a superstition, but as a sacred science. The Hindus, too, spoke of the material and the causal, of the waking world and the world of origin. The material, they taught, is the residue of thought, the causal, the place where thought is first born from the silence of pure consciousness. And the mystics of the Hermetic tradition went further still. They declared, as above, so below, as within, so without. In this single law they gave us the key to the entire structure of existence, that the macrocosm and the microcosm are reflections of one another. That which is hidden governs that which is seen. What then is the purpose of this knowledge? Why must one understand the dual structure of reality? Because until man perceives both realms, he cannot walk in truth. He remains a prisoner of effect, blind to cause. He believes that the things which happen to him are external, accidental, imposed from without. But the initiate knows that the outer world is shaped by the inner, that the vibration of thought precedes the movement of matter, and that events unfold not from fate, but from frequency. This realization is not academic, it is transformational. For when a man understands that he lives in two worlds, he ceases to fear one and worship the other. He learns to navigate between them, to hold them both in awareness. He becomes, at last, whole. There are signs that you have already touched the edge of the unseen world. Have you ever walked into a place and felt discomfort before a word was spoken? Have you met a person whose presence stirred unease, though their actions were polite and their words were kind? Have you ever known something before it happened, not by deduction but by feeling? These are not accidents, they are echoes, traces of your subtle perception awakening. The world will call it intuition, but the sages called it something more, perception of the astral, the auric field, the vibrational imprint of a moment. And they taught that through proper cultivation, this perception could be sharpened, purified, and extended beyond the ordinary into the sacred. The unseen world is not a place you visit. It is a dimension of perception. It is here, now, overlapping with the visible. Every physical form has a vibrational blueprint behind it, every word an energy, every gesture a consequence in the subtle field. And when the eye behind the eyes begins to open, these truths become self-evident. You no longer react to what is said, you respond to what is meant. You no longer follow what is visible, you are moved by what is real. To live between the worlds is not to escape the earth, it is to walk upon it with sacred vision. The initiate does not float in abstraction. He plants his feet upon the ground, but his awareness is rooted in the eternal. He speaks, but from silence. He acts, but from alignment. He does not seek power over others, for he understands that the greatest power is mastery of self. The greatest tragedy of modern man is not that he disbelieves in the unseen, but that he has lost his sensitivity to it. Distracted by machines, consumed by speed, addicted to certainty, he has dulled the instrument of perception that once allowed him to commune with the deeper layers of being. But the instrument is not broken, it is simply forgotten, and what is forgotten can be remembered. This remembrance begins not with effort, but with stillness, not with the accumulation of knowledge, but with the quieting of noise. When the inner world is made still, the unseen begins to speak again, and when man listens, not with his ears, but with his soul, he will find that the world he thought was solid is only half of what is. That behind every event there is a pattern, behind every encounter a lesson, behind every silence a presence. To live between the seen and the unseen is to return to your natural state. It is to walk as the ancients walked, not in superstition, but in sacred science. It is to understand that the world is not composed of parts, but of layers, and the deepest layers are accessible only to the heart that has learned to see without eyes. You are not merely a body with a mind. You are a being of light veiled in matter, and when you remember both, the veil begins to lift. This is not belief. This is vision, and it begins not with answers, but with the willingness to see again. Chapter 3. The Forbidden Path of the Initiate. There are paths that man may walk in daylight, guided by the handrails of common knowledge and consensus belief. These are the ways of trade, of ambition, of worldly comfort. They require no preparation of the soul, no purification of the heart, only a willing obedience to what has already been accepted. But there exists another path, a narrow, luminous thread, not trodden by many, not proclaimed by institutions, not found in the proclamations of society. It is the path of the initiative, and to walk it is to step out of the known and into the sacred unknown. This path is not forbidden by decree. It is forbidden by vibration. It cannot be entered through force or imitation. It opens itself only to those whose being resonates with its frequency. Not the frequency of desire, nor curiosity, nor the hunger for power, but the frequency of purity, of devotion, of inner readiness. It is this readiness that determines access, not intellect, not lineage, not charisma. For the gate to inner vision does not open to the clever, but to the quiet, not to the loud, but to the aligned. Throughout the ancient world, this path was protected not by guards or walls, but by silence. In the mystery schools of Egypt, of Eleusis, of the Essenes and the Chaldeans, wisdom was never shouted from the rooftops. It was whispered in darkness, encoded in the symbol, and passed from master to pupil through the subtle exchange of vibration. Not because it was elitist, but because it was holy. It was understood that the sacred could not be desecrated by exposure to the unprepared without consequence, not only for the knowledge, but for the soul of the one who touched it too soon. The initiate, therefore, was not someone chosen at random. He was one who had proven, not by achievement but by attunement, that his heart had ripened, his ego had softened, and his body had been tempered by discipline and silence. And only then could he be shown what had always existed just behind the veil of form. Why such caution? Because the vision that comes to the true initiate is not conceptual. It is experiential. It is not a new set of beliefs. It is the shattering of illusion. And this shattering is not gentle. For when a soul begins to perceive the world as it truly is, the false layers must fall away. The attachments to identity, to ambition, to superiority, all of them dissolve under the weight of unfiltered truth, and this dissolution can feel like death to the unprepared. That is why the ancients veiled the truth in allegory. That is why the great teachers spoke in parables, why they cloaked their teachings in stories and riddles. It was not deception, it was protection. The words themselves were not the teaching. The state of being they evoked, that was the teaching. Only in that subtle state, where the mind becomes still and the heart becomes receptive, can the sacred enter without resistance. To enter this path, one must first surrender the notion that knowledge alone is sufficient. One may read every scripture, memorize every sacred text, speak eloquently of metaphysical systems, and yet still remain outside the temple. The threshold is not crossed by accumulation. It is crossed by transformation. It is crossed when the soul begins to remember its own essence, when it awakens from the sleep of appearances and turns inward, not to find something new, but to return to something timeless. The path is forbidden not to punish but to protect, and once readiness is achieved, the guardian of the threshold steps aside, not with ceremony, but with silence. The initiate does not experience fireworks, visions, or celestial fanfare. He feels a deeper stillness enter him, a clarity that has no edge, a knowing that requires no proof. And from that moment, the outer world becomes transparent. He sees not only the event but the energy behind it. He hears not only words, but the vibration beneath them. He lives, not in abstraction, but in alignment. This is the mark of the true initiate, not what he knows, but how he walks, not what he says, but how he listens, not how he appears to others, but how attuned he has become to the voice within. And this voice is not loud, it does not flatter, it speaks rarely and only in truth. But when it speaks, it carries the weight of the cosmos. Many seek the secrets of the ancients without first seeking the silence of their own hearts. They pursue the rituals, the symbols, the terminology, but the presence eludes them. Why? Because the sacred is not found in things, it is found in states. A true ritual is not a performance, it is a doorway, and that doorway will not open unless the one who approaches it has laid down all pretense. This is the forgotten discipline of modern man, the discipline of inwardness. He studies the stars but neglects the heavens within. He dissects the atom but forgets the soul. He builds machines that speak but forgets how to listen. And yet, the path remains, silent, waiting, not closed, only hidden in breath, in solitude, in the whisper between two thoughts. If you have felt the stirrings of this path within yourself, if you have sensed that there is something in you that has never fully belonged to this world, then know that the ancient temple has already begun to rise again, not in stone, but in your being. The rituals are not external, they are encoded in your breath, your awareness, and your attention. And when you align these three, the inner altar lights itself. Do not rush, do not force. The sacred has its own pace. It moves like the stars, precise, inevitable, serene. You are not here to seize anything. You are here to remember, and remembrance cannot be commanded, it can only be allowed. So let it come. Let the silence open. Let the path unfold not ahead of you, but within you. For the initiate does not walk toward the truth. He becomes still enough for the truth to walk toward him. Chapter 4. Dreaming While Awake. The Science of Inner Sight. In the soul of man there exists a faculty, neither physical nor imaginary, which, when awakened, grants access to a realm deeper than the senses and older than thought. This faculty has been known under many names throughout the ages: the third eye, the eye of Horus, the Ajna chakra, the eye of providence, and the lamp of the body. Yet all names refer to the same luminous center, a portal through which the soul perceives directly, without interference from the rational mind. This inner sight is not a poetic metaphor, it is an operative instrument of perception, a true organ of the subtle body, and its activation represents not a symbolic journey, but a profound reorientation of consciousness. To awaken this inner vision is to alter one's relationship to space, to time, and to self. It is not the seeing of something external, but the lifting of a veil that has long obscured the infinite landscape within. To understand the science of this inner eye, one must first accept a premise well understood by the ancients and increasingly confirmed by the discoveries of modern science, that the world perceived through the five senses is a narrow band of a much larger spectrum. Our eyes perceive only a thin sliver of light, our ears register only a limited range of frequency. The world we call real is not the whole of existence, it is a filtered fragment, yet there is something within you that remembers more. Have you ever asked yourself how it is possible to dream? Truly considered it, not as a function of psychology, but as a phenomenon of consciousness. In the dream state you see landscapes, faces, colors, and movement. You feel emotion. You witness events that follow a logic different from waking life, yet entirely coherent within their own dimension. All of this occurs while your physical eyes are closed, while your body is still, while no external stimuli are present. Where do these images come from? Who generates them? What dimension are you touching when you sleep? The sages taught that dreams are not illusions but excursions. In sleep, the soul withdraws from the physical shell and returns to its native frequency, moving freely within the astral or psychic plane, gathering impressions, receiving instruction, and communing with intelligences that cannot enter the waking mind. The dream, then, is not a distortion of reality, but a doorway to it. The key is this: That which dreams is also that which sees when the inner eye awakens. The same current of consciousness that moves through you at night is active always, only veiled, only silenced beneath the thunder of thought and the distractions of the world. Thus, to awaken inner vision is to enter a conscious dream, not a fantasy, but a higher order of reality. You are not creating visions. You are perceiving what has always been present, but imperceptible through the ordinary channels of the body. To do this, one must shift the seat of awareness. Ordinary perception places consciousness behind the eyes, looking outward. But true sight begins when consciousness turns inward, when the gaze is reversed, and attention becomes like a light shining from the center of the skull, illuminating not the world outside, but the temple within. This sacred reversal is not an act of will. It cannot be forced. It is the natural result of alignment, of breath made calm, of thought made still, of attention brought into focus. When these conditions are present, a subtle sensation begins to arise, a warmth between the eyebrows, a tingling at the center of the forehead, and a magnetic pull inward. This is not imagination. It is the stirring of a latent power, the eye behind the eyes, awakening from its long sleep. The modern intellect, trained to doubt what cannot be dissected, may call this hallucination, but what the skeptic rejects, the mystic confirms by experience. For the visions that come to the inner eye are not meaningless images. They are living symbols, archetypes, fragments of a greater language, a language that speaks not to the mind, but to the soul. When one learns to remain in that state, neither fully awake nor fully asleep, something miraculous begins to occur. Shapes form in the darkness, colors arise unbidden, sensations move through the subtle body. And if the seeker remains still, without grasping, without judgment, these impressions begin to communicate. Not in words, but in resonance. This is not superstition, it is science, not the science of matter, but the science of spirit. And the brain itself confirms this. In these states, the brain waves shift, from beta, the rhythm of doing, to alpha, the rhythm of stillness. From alpha to theta, the threshold of dreams, where the subconscious becomes visible. And in the rarest of initiates, from theta into delta, the deep silence, where the soul rests in union with the unseen. These frequencies are not metaphors. They are signatures of consciousness. They reflect the condition of the mind, the depth of awareness, and the alignment of self with soul. And when the initiate learns to enter these states at will, not through sleep but through stillness, he becomes the master of the inner gate. This mastery is not a spectacle. It is not for entertainment. It is not to impress or perform. It is sacred. It is private. It is the return of sight to the soul, and with it comes a responsibility. For once one begins to see what lies beyond the surface, one can no longer live on the surface alone. Words must be chosen with care. Thoughts must be purified. Environments must be attuned. Because the one who sees feels, and the one who feels must act in harmony with what is seen. This is why the inner eye was never activated for amusement. It was awakened only in those prepared to live accordingly. To see the truth and not live by it is the greatest blindness of all. You are not just a mind inside a body. You are light, clothed in form, capable of perceiving realities beyond the veil. And that light, long hidden, long dormant, now begins to stir again, not because of these words, but because you were ready to remember. The dream has ended, the veil has thinned, and the eye that sees without seeing has begun to open. Chapter 5. The 7 Breaths, Awakening the Inner Temple. There comes a time when words no longer suffice, when study must give way to silence and reflection must yield to practice. This is that moment. For truth cannot be held indefinitely in abstraction. It must descend like breath into the lungs, like light into a darkened room, like a presence into the sanctuary of the soul. The time has come to turn inward, to walk deliberately toward the unseen gate, not with the intellect but with the whole being. The ancient rites always began with breath. For breath is not merely a function of biology, it is the sacred rhythm that links the visible and the invisible. It is the movement of spirit into matter and back again. Each inhale draws the unseen into the body. Each exhale returns the body to the unseen. This rhythm is the most intimate ritual you perform, 10,000 times a day, yet it remains unconscious in most. But when it is made conscious, the breath becomes a ladder between the worlds. The initiate begins here. Not with fanfare, not with dramatic gestures, but with stillness. He sits, spine upright like the pillar of Djed, a symbol of stability in Egyptian rites. He becomes aware not of thought but of presence. The room around him ceases to matter. Time begins to soften, and in that sacred pause, the breath becomes the gateway. 7 breaths. This is the number given by the ancients, not arbitrarily, but because 7 reflects the law of completion. There are 7 tones in the natural scale, 7 visible planets in classical astrology, 7 sacred chakras in the body. And in the breath, 7 steps of awakening, each one a deeper layer of return. In the first breath, the initiate feels the body, not the image of the body, but its weight, its pulse, its grounding. He inhales through the nose, slow and silent, allowing the breath to fill not just the lungs but the belly, the ribs and the chest, like water filling a sacred vessel. He exhales with equal presence. There is no rush, only reverence. In the second breath, he shifts awareness to the space between breaths, the pause, that subtle stillness that exists after the inhale, before the exhale, and again after the exhale, before the next inhale. In that pause lives the mystery. For it is not the breath itself that awakens the inner temple, it is the consciousness that rides upon it. The silence between notes is what makes music holy. With the third breath, the initiate draws attention to the forehead, the center just above and between the brows, not forcing sensation, but gently placing awareness there, as if lighting a lamp in a darkened room. A warmth may arise, a tingling, a slight pull inward. These are not hallucinations. They are the first signs of subtle activation, the awakening of the eye behind the eyes. The fourth breath invites light. No external light, but an inner illumination, felt, not seen. The initiate visualizes a single point of golden light in the center of the head, behind the forehead. With each inhale, this light becomes brighter. With each exhale, it expands gently outward, illuminating the space within like dawn through stained glass. This is the sacred flame of perception, the same fire that the Zoroastrians held as divine, the same light depicted in the halos of saints. In the fifth breath, the initiate lets go of imagery. Now there is only awareness, vast, formless, quiet. Thoughts may arise, but they pass like clouds across an ancient sky. Sensations may stir, but the witness remains unmoved. This is the breath of non-attachment, the moment the initiate ceases to grasp and begins to receive. Here the veil begins to ripple. The sixth breath brings resonance. The breath no longer feels like air. It feels like a vibration, like subtle energy moving through the body, harmonizing the fields, attuning the instrument. The body is no longer dense. It is a tuning fork, vibrating at a sacred frequency. The initiate may feel his boundaries dissolve. He is not disappearing. He is remembering that he is more than skin and bone. He is in the field. He is a wave. He is spirit, clothed in form. And with the seventh breath, the gate opens, not with spectacle, but with peace. A profound stillness descends, a silence that is not empty but full. Time no longer applies. The mind is no longer noisy. There is only being, expansive, clear, rooted in a center that does not move. And from that center, perception begins to change. Shapes may form in the mind's eye, colors, pulses, movement, not fantasy, but frequency. The unseen world begins to make itself known, not because you forced it, but because you matched it. This is the law. The sacred cannot be seized. It can only be met. And breath is the meeting point. Let us be clear, this is not visualization, this is activation. Visualization is something you do, activation is something you allow. It is the natural flowering of stillness when the conditions are right. It is the unfolding of a higher faculty, long dormant, now quickened by your sincerity. The 7 breaths are not a trick. They are not a performance. They are a key, and you are the lock. Each time you return to this ritual, you deepen the groove. You awaken the ancient channels that once guided the priests of Memphis, the sages of Varanasi, and the mystics of Qumran. They all began here, not in temples of stone, but in temples of silence. And now you have entered the same sanctuary, not because someone granted you permission, but because your own being said, "I am ready." Stay here a moment longer. Let the silence complete its work. The mind may ask what is next, but the soul knows this was never about going forward. It was always about going inward. From this point forward, you do not walk as one who seeks. You walk as one who sees. Chapter 6. Frequencies of the Soul, the Science Behind the Sacred. There has never been a true divide between science and spirituality, only a misalignment of language. What the mystic calls vibration, the scientist measures as frequency. What the sage experiences as presence, the neurologist detects as shifts in brain waves. The illusion of opposition is born not from contradiction, but from perspective. And when the initiate learns to stand at the intersection of these two worlds, where spirit speaks through structure, he discovers that both are pieces of a greater architecture. The body is not merely a vessel. It is a living instrument, precisely tuned, divinely designed, and capable of receiving frequencies far beyond the normal register of waking life. Within the cathedral of the skull, the brain hums with rhythms. These rhythms, called brainwaves, are not just byproducts of thought. They are the signatures of consciousness itself. When you are caught in the noise of daily survival, calculating, reacting, measuring, and comparing, your brain pulses in the beta range, fast, shallow, restless. It is the rhythm of doing, the rhythm of effort. And though necessary for navigating the material world, beta is not the realm of inner sight. It is the outer shell, the surface of the sea. But beneath the surface, the waters deepen. When the breath slows, when the eyes close, when the senses soften and attention turns inward, the brain shifts into alpha. Here the waves grow longer. There is space between thoughts. This is the realm of calm awareness, the doorway to subtle perception. Artists feel it in their flow. Musicians hear it in silence. Meditators rest in its embrace. Alpha is the bridge between the worlds, neither asleep nor fully awake, but deeply receptive. And if one dares to go further, past the bridge, past the stillness of thought, he enters Theta. This is the sacred threshold, the rhythm of dreams, of memory, of archetype, the language of the subconscious, the realm of myth and symbol. In Theta, the veil begins to part. The initiate may receive visions, hear inner voices, or encounter archetypal beings, not as hallucinations, but as echoes from a deeper realm. The ancient temples were built to induce this state. The sacred geometry, the chants, the dim light, the incense, the low tones, all were calibrated to draw the initiate into Theta, not to escape reality, but to pierce it, to access that place where the divine whispers and the soul remembers. Then there is the delta, the slowest wave, the deepest current. Here the self dissolves, time ceases. There is no image, no name, no boundary, only presence. This is the rhythm of the sages in samadhi, of the mystics lost in union. It is rare, for it requires full surrender. But in delta one does not perceive the divine, one merges with it. Modern instruments can detect these frequencies, but they cannot explain them. For while science can measure the wave, only the soul can ride it. The mystic does not observe from a distance. He becomes the state. He aligns his breath, his posture, his focus, not to manipulate but to match. And in matching he is changed. This is the alchemy of vibration, the transformation not of lead into gold, but of noise into harmony. The initiate does not force a higher state. He prepares the temple, clears the static, and allows the sacred to enter. And the sacred always moves in waves. Even the breath itself carries frequencies. A shallow breath agitates the nervous system and keeps the body in beta. A long, slow, rhythmic breath entrains the mind to alpha or theta. This is not superstition. It is coherence. It is the rediscovery of what the ancients knew long before machines existed. That man is a being of resonance, and his state of consciousness determines the world he inhabits, have you not noticed? When you are angry, the world seems hostile. When you are in grief, all things appear heavy. When you are at peace, everything opens. The outer world reflects the inner frequency. Change the inner rhythm, and the outer pattern dissolves. The sacred breath rituals, the 7 breaths you have practiced, are not random. They are frequency modulators. They calm the body, slow the brain, and soften the ego. They are sacred not because they are ancient, but because they work. They bypass the thinking mind and enter the realm of knowing. This is why the path of awakening is not a matter of belief. It is a matter of frequency. 2 radios may sit side by side. One is silent, the other sings. Why? Because only one is tuned. The music was always there, but only the attuned receiver could reveal it. You are that receiver, and now you are tuning yourself. The brain is not your enemy. It is your amplifier. But it must be cleared of static, of fear, of distraction, of obsessive thinking, and it is through conscious breath, sacred attention, and silence that the tuning occurs. You have already felt it, in the stillness, in the warmth between the eyes, in the spaciousness that comes after the 7th breath. You have entered altered rhythms, and from these rhythms, a new vision is being born, not as fantasy but as perception beyond form. Do not rush it. The flower does not bloom because it forces itself open. It blooms because the environment becomes right. You are cultivating that environment. Science and spirit are not separate paths. They are one spiral, climbing toward the same summit from different sides. And now you stand where the spiral meets. You are not here to choose between mysticism or science. You are here to become the bridge between them. For when the inner light meets the outer structure, when vibration meets the vessel, when the eternal meets the temporal, then, and only then, can true vision emerge. You are not imagining this, you are remembering it, and soon you will begin to see it. Chapter 7. The Guardians of the Threshold. Trials of the Inner Gate. The ancient mystery schools warned their initiates of a presence that appears just before true awakening, not a divine being, nor a cosmic enemy, but a reflection of self. This presence goes by many names: the dweller on the threshold, the shadow, and the guardian of the gate. It is not evil, but it is formidable. It does not seek to block you, but to weigh you. Entry into higher realms is not gifted, it is earned. And the currency is your capacity to face your own fear. Every seeker who draws near the veil will, in time, encounter resistance. It may come in the form of doubt, creeping in with the quiet voice of logic. It may appear as fear, sudden and unshakable, rising like a tide the moment you begin to touch the unseen. Or it may take subtler shapes: impatience, distraction, self-importance. All of these are guardians, not placed there by any external force, but arising naturally as the ego senses it is no longer in control. Understand this: these trials are not a mistake, they are a rite of passage. In the halls of the pyramids, the initiate was led blindfolded into darkness. He was told nothing. He was left alone, surrounded by the weight of the stones and the silence of eternity. There, in that pitch-black tomb of stone and symbol, he confronted his own mind, his own past, his own illusions. And only when he emerged whole, having neither fled nor collapsed, was he granted access to the sacred teachings. Today the temples are gone, but the threshold remains. It arises the moment you begin to see differently, when the senses soften and another world brushes against your skin. It is in this moment that the mind rebels. It does not do so from malice. It does so from habit. The conditioned self, the personality crafted by years of input and reaction, cannot comprehend a state where it is not central, so it resists, it mocks, it clings. Doubt is the first guardian. It speaks with the voice of reason, but wears the mask of fear. "This isn't real," it whispers. "You're imagining it. You're wasting your time." But behind these words is a deeper cry. "I'm afraid to let go." Next comes fear itself. It may surge during a breath ritual, in meditation, or upon waking from a vivid dream. It tightens the chest, it floods the body. But if you examine it closely, you will find that it has no clear object. It is not fear of a thing. It is fear of the unknown. It is the cry of the small, self-facing dissolution. Then comes the temptation of power. As the inner vision grows sharper, one may glimpse images, symbols, and sensations. And with them, the ego may return in subtler form, whispering, "You are special. You are chosen." This too is a test. For the sacred cannot reside where vanity lives. The true initiate does not seek status. He seeks silence. These guardians are not obstacles. They are mirrors. They reflect the impurities of the vessel, not to shame, but to purify. To press beyond them is not to fight, but to see, to say, "I recognize you and I remain still." The initiate must understand that no higher vision can be sustained unless the heart has been made ready. For to see clearly is also to feel deeply. And the unprepared heart cannot hold the weight of divine perception without distortion. That is why these trials come, not to punish but to prepare. There are those who glimpse the inner world briefly, then recoil, returning to ordinary life, declaring, "It was nothing, just a trick of the mind." They do not realize that what they saw was real, but that they themselves were not yet ready to carry its truth. The vision was not denied. It was offered, and withdrawn for protection. For the soul must be stable before it can hold fire. So how does one pass the guardians? By witnessing them, not by resisting, not by fleeing, but by watching, calmly, firmly, with presence. Every time you sit in silence and the doubt comes, and you stay. Every time fear rises, and you breathe. Every time impatience urges you to abandon the ritual, and you return. In these moments you are not failing. You are passing through initiation. The old alchemists called this process the nigredo, the blackening. It was the necessary stage before gold could emerge. In spiritual alchemy, it is the phase where all that is false must surface and be seen in the light of awareness. You are not regressing, you are being refined. Eventually, something shifts. The voices grow quiet. The fear no longer grips me. The ego returns to its rightful place, not as a ruler, but as a servant. And in that stillness, the true self, unborn, eternal, vast, rises like a sun behind your eyes. That is when the guardians step aside, not with fanfare, not with applause, but with reverence. For you have become not merely a student of truth, but a vessel for it. From here, your path will deepen, but it will no longer be driven by seeking. It will be guided by resonance. The sacred will come to you, not because you chase it, but because you have become compatible with it. The inner eye no longer flickers, it glows. You no longer ask, "Am I ready?" You know. And as you walk forward, past the tests, past the tremors, past the final veil, you no longer seek the light. You are the light. Chapter 8. The Return of the Seer, Walking Between Worlds. There is a moment in all sacred journeys when the seeker realizes that the door he struggled to find was always within him. That which appeared as the ascent was truly a descent, into the depths of being, into the forgotten chambers of the soul, and that the vision he sought was never granted by external force, but uncovered by inward surrender. You are now standing in that moment. The path behind you is no longer linear. It is a spiral. Every breath, every silence, every flicker of insight was not a step forward, but a return to the original clarity buried beneath centuries of noise. You have not been changed by this journey. You have been revealed, and so we now arrive at the beginning disguised as an end. This is not the conclusion of your awakening. It is the point at which you begin to live as one who sees, not with eyes that merely observe the surface of form, but with vision that penetrates the veil, detecting the subtle architecture behind appearances, sensing the intention beneath the word, perceiving the energy behind the matter. You are now among the few who no longer confuse the shadow for the flame. But this gift is not for spectacle, it is not for entertainment, it is not given for power or prestige. True inner vision always comes with a silent covenant, that it be used for the healing of perception, the uplifting of the human condition, and the quiet restoration of harmony in a world that has forgotten its own sacred blueprint. You do not need to teach this with words. You teach it by frequency. Your presence becomes the teaching, your stillness becomes the transmission, and your every step becomes a prayer, one that whispers into the invisible, I remember. To walk with inner vision is to walk between two worlds. One is the visible, the world of form, logic, responsibility, and noise. You still dwell there. You still act, choose, and respond. But now, you do so with a second awareness, the awareness of the unseen, of vibration, of meaning deeper than appearances. You know that behind every conflict lives a dissonance of energy, that every illness has an unseen origin, that every encounter carries a message beyond words. And so you no longer react, you read, you no longer judge, you listen, you no longer seek proof, you feel the resonance. This is the life of the awakened seer. It is not one of dramatic visions or mystical phenomena, it is one of clarity, of alignment, of simplicity. You eat, breathe, and move like everyone else, but you do so in harmony with the great pattern. You follow the current of your inner compass, even when the world around you points elsewhere. You obey the quiet pull of the invisible, not because it is safe, but because it is true. And in this way, the ancient path continues through you. For though the temples of stone may crumble, the temple of the soul remains eternal. Though the old mystery schools have faded from the earth, their teachings are not lost. They live in every being who dares to walk the path of inward light. They live in you. Now, as you return to the ordinary, you will begin to see how extraordinary it truly is. A simple breath becomes sacred. A glance carries depth. A conversation becomes a mirror. The light behind the eyes of others reminds you, they too are on the journey. They too have forgotten who they are. They too are waiting to awaken. Do not wait for them. Just shine. Let your alignment speak louder than your advice. Let your silence calm more than your opinions. Let your frequency rise until it pulls others upward, without force, without agenda, without pride. This is the highest form of service, to walk as light through a dim world, not to escape the darkness, but to transmute it. There may be days when you forget, when the noise of the world clouds your vision, when the veil descends once more. This too is part of the spiral. Do not resist it. Simply return. Return to breath, to stillness, to the 7 sacred inhalations, to the center behind your eyes where no illusion can survive. And when you return, you will find it easier, quicker, deeper. For the path has been walked. The track is now etched in your being. And even when you sleep, the soul remembers. So let this final message be engraved not in thought but in presence. You are not a student of light. You are its living expression. You are not awakening. You are awakened, if you choose to remain so. Say it now, not as affirmation but as remembrance. My inner vision has awakened. Say it softly. Say it within. Say it not to declare to the world, but to whisper to the soul that you are ready to live accordingly. This voice will echo through time, through every choice you make, through every word you speak, through every silence you honor. And when others see something in you they cannot name, when they feel drawn not to your words but to your presence, know this: they are not seeing you, they are seeing the light behind your eyes. Let it shine, always. Epilogue. The eye that still watches. You've reached the end of this initiation, but something inside you knows this isn't the end at all. In fact, something has just begun. Because the most sacred knowledge never shouts. It whispers. It stirs gently just beneath what you thought was real, and now you've heard it. The breath you took during the ritual wasn't just air, it was a signal, a pulse echoing through dimensions announcing, "I remember." But here's the truth most won't tell you. What you've seen is only the first veil. There are deeper chambers still, hidden pathways that curve behind consciousness itself. Symbols you pass every day that carry messages meant only for awakened eyes. You are now among the few who've been shown the door, but it is up to you to walk through it, because vision is not the final gift. It is the first tool, and those who learn to use it discover that reality is not fixed. It's encoded in vibration, in memory, in sound, in silence. So ask yourself, what have you always felt was true, even when no one else saw it? That answer is not a belief, it's a key, and if you follow where it leads, you'll find what the ancient initiates guarded with their lives. The soul is not trying to escape this world, it's trying to reveal it. And if you're still listening now, then the temple hasn't closed, it's opened. Do you feel it? That sensation behind your forehead, like something old just turned its gaze toward you. That is the eye. It watches now, and it waits for your next move. The question is, are you ready to see what lies beyond the next veil? If so, we'll meet again. And next time, you won't just see. You'll remember why you came.